Hey folks, it's Stefan, back again with another episode of The Gamer's Companion to Music. Today we're going to enter the funkiest crypt you'll ever encounter. It's Crypt of the NecroDancer. This game's music will have you moving, it'll have you grooving, it'll have you dancing the night away as you descend deeper and deeper to find the truth. Grab your shovel and your dagger and let's move in step with cadence deep into the Crypt of the NecroDancer. Crypt of the NecroDancer is a 2015 roguelike rhythm game developed by Brace Yourself Games located in Canada. The game was released on PC first, then made its way to the PS4, Vita, iOS, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch throughout the next couple of years. The story sees Cadence searching for her treasure-hunting father. Her heart is stolen by the NecroDancer when she falls into his crypt, and all of her actions then become tied to the beat of the music. The gameplay is really fun and the game gets pretty hard at times, with many unlockable characters that change the way you play with respect to the beat. Bard, for example, is immune to the beat so he can move whenever he wants. Reaper on the Switch version spawns skulls on the spots where enemies die, which follow him around. Tempo's rhythms are twice as fast as Cadence's are. The levels change each time you play within the set of roguelike parameters, so you'll never quite face the same challenge twice. The music was originally composed by Danny Baranowski, also known as Danny B, who has worked on games such as Super Meat Boy, The Binding of Isaac, and Cadence of Hyrule. There are now a total of 7 soundtracks for the game, and some have been released over time, but the basic gist is that Danny B composed the music, then a bunch of other popular artists in the gaming world took those songs and covered and remixed them. You can go in and customize which remixes play by character, or just pick your favorite and play it for all of them. I'm a huge fan of hard rock and metal, so the soundtrack by Family Jewels is my personal favorite. The music in general grows in complexity and gets faster the further you progress through the game. This means that you have less time to think in between the beats in the 4th zone than you do in the 1st zone, adding to the challenge of movement as you progress. Most of the characters' names, as well as a few bosses, are named after musical elements that we see all the time as musicians. I'll give you the character name and then the definition of what that musical term really means. Cadence is the main character. In music, a cadence is a sequence of notes comprising the close of a musical phrase, basically the ending 2 chords of a harmonic line. Melody is the main tune you hear in any song. An aria is a long accompanied song for solo voice. Think of like an opera for this one. Nocturna isn't a musical term by itself, but a nocturne is a musical composition that's inspired by the night, which makes sense because she's a bat. She may also be named in reference to a DC comic book character, but that's just purely a guess on my part. Don't flame me if I'm wrong on that one. Choral is a song sung by a choir of voices, or a chorus. Dorian is a musical mode starting on the 2nd note of a scale. A coda is the ending section of a song. A bard was traditionally a poet reciting songs and poetry orally. Tempo is another word for the speed of a song, expressed in beats per minute, as we'll get into later. A riff, as in choral riff, is a short repeated phrase, such as heard in rock music, think like a guitar. Fortissimo is named after the musical dynamic fortissimo, which basically means to play very loudly. Frankensteinway is named after the famous piano company Steinway, which has risen to the gold standard of piano making by which most music programs are judged on. Yes, all Steinway schools are really a thing. Finally, the conductor is the leader of an orchestra or band, waving around their baton and leading the group. I'm going to go through each world with Danny B's soundtrack, since that was the original, then I'll go through a section on each of the other soundtracks. There are currently 5 zones in the game. 4 were there in the original release, and the 5th was DLC released with Crypt of the NecroDancer Amplified. The original 4 zones remind me a lot of the zones in Spelunky. Zone 1 is cave themed, Zone 2 is jungle themed, Zone 3 is ice and fire, and Zone 4 is dungeon themed. The 5th zone added is electric themed. A boss level spawns after the 3rd level in each zone, and boss variants change based on where you are in the game. Zone 1 death metal, for example, is significantly easier than Zone 4 death metal. In the caves, we start out with a slower-paced grooving track called Disco Descent that clocks in at 115 BPM. BPM stands for beats per minute, and is what musicians refer to when they're talking about the tempo or the speed of a piece of music. All of the tempo listings for this video were taken directly from Crypt of the NecroDancer wiki on Fandom, so don't hate on me, hate on them if you feel like it's really 114 beats per minute on Disco Descent, not 115. It's close enough and you really wouldn't hear the difference. Any dang way. Crypt Tech from 1-2 clocks in at 130 BPM and is my favorite of the three. Mausoleum Mash is the fastest of the Zone 1 tracks, coming in at 140 beats per minute. If you're doing all zones runs, you hear these three tracks quite a lot, and it provides a nice steady intro into the game musically. This electronic beat that you're hearing behind me talking right now is indicative of all the music you'll hear throughout the game. The strong beat is absolutely necessary in a rhythm game like this. If the music didn't have a very strong pulse, it would be hard to instinctively know when to press the buttons. It's not enough to show it on the screen, the player has to feel it. Enjoy some of the music from this first world. Zone 2 slows it down just a hair as it starts to add more complex enemies to the mix. Fungal Funk is groovy as hell and clocks in at 130 beats per minute. Graverobbing brings us back to 140 and is just as subdued as the first level in this set. The beat isn't quite as heavy behind the music, which actually adds a little bit to the challenge, to my point from Zone 1 that music with a strong beat is easier for the player to feel. Portobello Head from 2-3, and it might be the most hilarious title in the soundtrack, is deceptively challenging at 150 beats per minute. It goes fast, but the music picks up this sort of eerie groove. You press the buttons at 150 beats per minute, but it honestly feels like the song is in halftime around 75 beats per minute. This is a common occurrence when music gets faster. Oftentimes we hear the strong beats every 2 beats instead of every 1 beat. Here, I'll demonstrate it with this song. So like instead of doom, 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 you're talking about boom, 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 feeling at halftime. Zone 3 is awesome. Before we get into all the different tempi in this song, this zone has 2 elements for each level, ice and fire, or just hot and cold. The music is different for the cold section than the hot section, and the music crossfades seamlessly when you transition between the 2 sections. The cold sections were done by Danny B, and the hot sections were done by Family Jewels 7X, who I'll refer to as Family Jewels for the rest of the video. The hot sections are metal remixes of the cold section, but it really adds to the change of feeling when you go between the two sections. It's epic and awesome, and was a really great way to further distinguish the contrast in sections within a single level. 3-1 clocks in at 135, 3-2 comes in at 145, and 3-3 is 155 beats per minute, the fastest song we've heard so far. Take a listen to the 3 level themes back to back. To back! Worldport sucks, and it has nothing to do with the music. The levels are hard. You have to break through a wall to reveal the next section, and the enemies here are tough. There's a little bit of a difficulty curve built into the music, however, with Sticks and Stones from 4-1 only coming in at 130 beats per minute. Don't you get too complacent though, because we ramp up very quickly. Heart of the Beat is a really cool shuffle beat at 145 beats per minute, and The Wait to Remain kicks up to 160 beats per minute. There's really not a lot of time to think in 4-3, and the driving rhythmic feel of the music really drives you forward into the next area. Here are those 3 songs from Zone 4. Before we get into the boss music, we gotta talk about Zone 5. As I mentioned before, Zone 5 was added in the Amplified DLC, along with Nocturna's storyline, which is really cool by the way. 5-1 starts with a song called Volt's Waltz. I thought this was oddly named, since waltzes are in 3, but this song is absolutely in 4. So it's not really a waltz, but it does sound cool nonetheless. 5-1 comes in at 130 beats per minute, followed by power chords for 5-2 at 140. Now this song has a little bit more of a chiptune feel in the rhythm at times. This is also one of my favorite shopkeeper songs. We'll talk about the shops later too. 6 Feet Thunder is the song for 5-3, as well as the title theme after you beat the original storyline, and the game shows the amplified DLC title screen. This song is another one of the fastest songs in the game, coming in at 155 beats per minute. So now I'm going to have a chart on the screen with all of the level songs and the associated speeds with each of those songs. You start to see some patterns when you look at the music this way. The levels in Zone 1 add 15 beats per minute between each song. Zone 2 adds 10, Zone 3 adds 10, Zone 4 adds 15, and then Zone 5 adds 10 between levels 1 and 2, and 15 between levels 2 and 3. It's interesting because this had to be a decisive choice made by both the composer and the game designers together. I'm spending so much time on these tempo numbers because they are literally what drive the difficulty in the game. Try adding some of your own songs in the PC version, a feature that exists, and see what faster or slower music does to the difficulty of the game. We'll come back to this chart after we listen to the boss music too. There are 5 bosses in the game and in all zones run: Deep Blues, Coral Rift, King Conga, Death Metal, and Fortissimo. There's other major story bosses that are tied specifically to character storylines. Dead Ringer appears in Cadence's story, while the NecroDancer appears in Cadence and Melody's stories. Aria fights the Golden Lute, while Nocturna fights Frankensteinway and the Conductor. King Conga's song is one of the slowest in the game at 120 beats per minute. The rhythm does a cool thing for this conga line. It pauses for 1 beat after you've done 7. This really tripped me up the first few times I played the boss until I looked at the beats on the screen and realized, oh, it skips one. Deep Blues is a cool fight because you have to kill all the chess pieces, and they move exactly as chess pieces actually move. Bishops move diagonally, queens move every direction, etc. This song is 123 beats per minute, again giving you some time to think about what is going on. Coral Rift's song is 126 beats per minute and starts with a pretty cool bass guitar riff. Oh, the irony and the wordplay. Death Metal has the fastest song in the game, and it was done by Family Jewels at 175 beats per minute. This makes it really hard to think on your feet without missing any beats. Fortissimo's amazing song, Notorious D.I.G., comes in at 150 beats per minute, with a sick rap recorded by Mega Ran, a nerdcore rapper and chiptune DJ.
The unholy moly, underworld bully, I will crush those who oppose me, just like Mummy told me. My ambitions are cavernous, my motto is avarice. With loot I get so amorous, for gold I am ravenous.
There are some other bosses in the game mentioned earlier, but I'll move on for now. If you want to check them out, go ahead.
My man,
talk about shopkeepers. I think I was about 2 levels in for the first time I ever played this game when the shopkeepers made me realize this game was going to be different and very, very special. The shopkeepers sing along with the music. And I'm not even kidding. You know you're close to a shop because they'll all start legit singing the melody. Every single song has a shopkeeper version on the soundtrack, and it's one of the most amazing and surprising musical moments I've experienced while playing a video game for the first time. It's a really great musical cue, and is absolutely hilarious every single time, especially when he goes up for those high notes. They did a great job of changing up the sounds from note to note, which gives his voice a lot of variety. Here are a few examples of this in action. Now let's talk about the amazing remixes. Every artist or group you'll hear in this section made a remix of the entire soundtrack. Yeah, you heard that right. Most of the time you hear a remix of one song, but these powerhouses cranked out an entire soundtrack in their own style, and they are absolutely fantastic. The first one is by A-Rival and is called the Melody Mixes for the character Melody. These songs are in the EDM style, also known as electronic dance music, which is super fitting for a game like this. The next is by Family Jewels in the metal style for the character Aria, called Aria's Ascent. This is my personal favorite because of my own musical taste. It just goes hard and heavy all the damn time. Jake Kaufman, also known as Vert, did the retro-style soundtrack for Eli called Freestyle Retro. You might be familiar with Jake's work as the composer of Shovel Knight in the chiptune style. Girlfriend Records made the synthwave soundtrack for the character Bard called the Synthwave Cuts. There are a few artists on this album, including Jonatron, Sphero, and Tommy86. OC Remix did the soundtrack to Nocturna, and this soundtrack includes various musical styles from 17 different artists. Pretty insane. The last is a chiptune style soundtrack for the character Dorian by Chipsel, called Chipped of the NecroDancer. This is collaboration at its finest and gives the player a ton of choice when they're playing the game. You can completely customize what songs play for what character, and that's made the replay experience much, much better. Maybe one day you're just feeling some chiptune and you want Chipsel or Verts remixes, and then maybe one day you're feeling the sick metal sounds of Family Jewels. Or, on the PC version, maybe you just want to put your own music in the game so the game can figure it out for you. There's endless possibilities. That was a lot to talk about, and I'm sure I didn't hit everything, but Crypt of the NecroDancer has been one of my favorite games of the past few years, especially the Switch version that I can take around wherever I go. Rhythm games aren't just Guitar Hero and Rock Band anymore. They're evolving into cooler and cooler ideas as we start to see more blending of genres of games throughout the 2010s. That's going to do it for this episode of The Gamer's Companion to Music. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a like and a subscribe. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Want some more Gamers Companion to Music? Check out the playlist here.